Welcome to Valley of Secrets. I'm your host, Nikki Ruth. Today's story brings us back to 2017 to a remote property in the backwoods of Mission, British Columbia. It was the kind of place that didn't make sense to linger in. No house, no neighbors, no cell service. Just a rundown shed, a tent, and a man who preferred the company of isolation. Yet someone was brought there one summer afternoon and never left. Weeks later, search teams would dig near the tree line and find exactly what they feared: a body of a woman. Who was she? And how did she end up there? And why did the last person to see her alive tell a story no one could believe? To answer those questions, we have to start long before that day in the woods, with the life of a young woman whose story deserves to be told. This is the story of Chelsey Gauthier. Chelsey Gauthier was born on February 10, 1995, in Abbotsford, British Columbia. She was the baby of the family, the youngest of three, with her brother Jeremiah and her sister Carrie looking out for her. Her dad Ray raised the kids on his own, and from everything he said publicly, from interviews to his YouTube channel, it sounds like he and Chelsey had that rare kind of father-daughter bond where they didn't just love each other. They genuinely liked each other. She called him all the time just to check in, to say hi, to tell him that she loved him. Just the everyday stuff you never think to appreciate until it's gone. Chelsey was creative. If something had color, texture, and sparkle, she was into it. Photography, makeup, little artistic projects, anything she could use to make something beautiful. Friends described her as warm, funny, and kind of goofy in the best way. The type to laugh hard at her own jokes. The type who could make a boring Tuesday feel fun. She had these little quirks that just paint such a clear picture of who she was. She loved happy faces, hamburgers, and crows. And honestly, if you're from the Valley, crows are basically citizens here. They're loud, opinionated, maybe a little misunderstood. But possibly that was why Chelsey liked them so much. By 22 years old, she was a mom to two little girls, Autumn and Abby. 3 and 2 years old. Babies. And every source, every family comment, every social media post makes it clear that she adored her little girls. They were everything to her. But she was also navigating some pretty tough stuff. Money was tight. Support systems weren't always steady. She was using marijuana and sometimes spending time with people who didn't necessarily have her best interest at heart. But I want to be clear. These struggles don't define her. They're context. Life was hard, and Chelsey was doing her best in a world that can be really unforgiving for young Indigenous moms. She was so much more than the circumstances she found herself in, and she deserved so much more time. It was July 27, 2017. One of those hot Fraser Valley midsummer afternoons where everything feels slow and the air just sits on you. Chelsey was carrying a lot. 2 little girls at home, bills to pay, and not a lot of options. And like so many young people out here, she sometimes took small jobs that weren't exactly legal, but paid just enough to get by. That day, she agreed to go out to a rural mission property, deep past Sylvester Road, to help 67-year-old Gary Donald Loesch with his illegal marijuana grow-up. This wasn't new. She'd been there before. She trimmed plants, helped out, made a little money, or bartered for weed that she could trade. Again, survival mode. she met Loesch and a man named Bill at the McDonald's on Borquin Crescent and South Fraser Way in Abbotsford. If you know the area, you know exactly the one. Right by the mall, lots of traffic, the perfect place for a meetup that doesn't draw any attention. Bill drove them out, 25 minutes north, the city slowly falling behind them. The farther they went, the quieter it got. No more shopping plazas or buses, just farmland, forest, and winding back roads where cell service starts to disappear. You know that feeling when you're driving deeper and deeper into somewhere isolated, and everything in your body just goes, okay, this feels a little off. Well, that's where they were heading. They arrived around noon. Bill dropped them off, watched them head towards a small shed on the property, run down, dilapidated, surrounded by trees, the air thick with fertilizer. Nothing about this place screams safe. And yet, this is where Chelsey worked, because this is what was offered to her. The plan was simple. Bill would come back later that night to pick them up and drive her back to Abbotsford. But hours later, Bill gets a text from Loesch saying, "Change of plans. We're staying overnight." And here's the part that never sits right. Not with me, not with investigators, and not with her family. This property didn't even have a real house on it. There was no cozy guest room, no couch that she could crash on, nothing. It was basically a shed, some outbuildings, and a tent where Loesch slept. So ask yourself, why would a 22-year-old mom, who always checked in, who had babies at home, who wasn't the type to disappear, suddenly decide to stay the night on a remote grow-up site in a tent with a 67-year-old man? She wouldn't. She absolutely wouldn't. Nothing about that makes sense. Bill also thought this was strange when he received the text, but he brushed it off. Maybe he thought they were finishing a job late and wanted to get an early morning start again the next day. His plan was to come back tomorrow to pick them up. And when he did, Chelsey was gone. Only Loesch stood there waiting. And when Bill asks Loesch what happened, he gives the most bizarre explanation imaginable. He says Chelsey got scared of bears in the middle of the night and hitchhiked home. Hitchhiked. In the pitch black of night, down rural forest roads with no streetlights, no traffic, and no cell service. And yet, she was scared of bears. So, if you're listening right now and thinking, absolutely not, you're not alone. The whole story sounds insane to me. By July 30th, 3 days after she was last seen, her phone was still off and no one had heard from her. So that night at 10:15 p.m., her cousin and roommate Jay called the Abbotsford police to report her missing. Now, I'm not exactly sure why it took 3 days to report her missing. Public records don't actually say whether Chelsey's daughters were living with her full time in those weeks leading up to her disappearance. What we do know is that she was their mom, she was involved, and she was trying to provide for them. But she was also juggling a lot: work, money, stress, unpredictable routines. And sometimes, especially in situations where young parents are sharing care with family, or swapping off responsibilities, or staying with friends, their comings and goings don't always trigger alarm right away. People may assume they're with someone else, or resting, or just taking a break. So maybe that's part of the reason why the first day and the second day went by, but by the third day, with no posts, no texts, no calls, everyone realized this wasn't normal, and this wasn't like Chelsey. And that's when Jay decided to make the call to police. Because whatever anyone believed before, by then, the silence was impossible to ignore. The Abbotsford Police Department began their search immediately. They traced Chelsey's movements backward, and everything pointed to that rural mission property, the one owned by Gary Loesch. Officers spoke with him almost right away on July 31st. He repeated his bear story, and I don't know who he thought would believe that story. The story made no sense on its face, and investigators picked up on that very quickly. A few days later, his story changed, saying that she left with a boyfriend and someone else. No one believed that either. Search teams started sweeping the area. They used police dogs, ATVs, and even helicopters scanning the forest canopy. Reports later described the terrain as dense and remote, so thick with brush and logging roads that you could hide almost anything out there. And unfortunately, someone did. For 2 weeks, nothing surfaced. No phone pings, no messages, no Chelsey. And then, on August 16, 2017, investigators returned with specialized teams to the property. IHIT, the BC Coroner Service, Forensic Identification Services, combed through the property again, this time slowly and methodically. And deep on the land, near the forest edge, an officer noticed something off. A patch of disturbed soil. You know, when the dirt looks freshly turned, like it's a different color or texture than the earth around it. They started to dig, and buried in a shallow grave, wrapped tightly in a sheet, they found a body, naked from the waist down. Even before DNA confirmed it, investigators already knew who they'd found. It would take weeks for the coroner's report to be finalized, but when it came, it confirmed everything. Chelsey died from a single stab wound to her back, and her death was ruled a homicide. Her life was taken from her violently and hidden in the ground like she didn't matter. And here's something that still breaks me. Many of the investigators later said that this case stuck with them because of who she was, because she was young, Indigenous, a mom of 2, because they saw their own daughters in her. And now they wanted justice. But justice would not come quickly. The case took years to build. Years. Imagine being Chelsey's family, waiting, hoping, reliving the same questions with no answers in sight. Her dad, Ray, has said publicly that the waiting was almost worse than the moment he learned that she had been found. Behind the scenes, investigators kept working, slowly, meticulously, building a case that would hold up in court. Investigators focused in on Gary Donald Loesch. They found a man with a troubling history, someone well known to police long before Chelsey ever met him. At 67 years old, Loesch had a criminal record that stretched back decades. His prior convictions included assault, harassment, theft, resisting a peace officer, uttering threats, drug possession, arson, and breaching court conditions. None of it painted the picture of a harmless old man tending plants on a farm. There's no reports stating whether Loesch lived full-time on the property, but neighbors described the area as quiet, secluded, and unsettling. One person later told reporters that the property had always, quote-unquote, felt off. Others said they rarely saw visitors stay long. As detectives dug deeper, a pattern began to emerge with Loesch. Several people who had spent time around him described how he made inappropriate comments towards younger women. It wasn't unusual for him to offer work trimming marijuana or to trade drugs for labor. The arrangement drew people in, usually the most vulnerable, and those struggling financially, just like Chelsey. But it was also risky. The property was isolated, surrounded by dense woods, and far from anyone who could help if something went wrong. One theory investigators explored was that Loesch may have made advances towards Chelsey that she rejected, and that the situation escalated. Nothing in the evidence could confirm exactly what happened that night, but the combination of her injuries, his lies, and the way her body was hidden told a clear story of violence and concealment. When questioned again, Loesch tried to shift the blame. He told police that maybe others were involved, that Chelsey had stolen from someone, or that someone thought she was an informant. But there was no proof of that, and investigators could find no evidence that anyone else was present. The forensic work spoke louder than anything Loesch said. His DNA was found on the sheet that wrapped her body, and the soil samples matched his property. His timeline didn't hold. Despite all of this, prosecutors needed to be absolutely certain before moving forward. The case had to withstand every possible defense, every loophole, and every doubt, so they kept building piece by piece for years. And by 2022, 5 years after Chelsey's death, the Crown felt they finally had enough to move forward. In September 2022, police finally arrested and charged 67-year-old Gary Donald Loesch with second-degree murder and indignity to human remains. For Chelsey's family, it was the moment they had been waiting for, a step toward accountability, though the pain never really lessened. Loesch elected to be tried by a judge alone, without a jury. His trial began in early 2025 at the Supreme Court of British Columbia in New Westminster and lasted for several months. The courtroom was tense. Chelsey's family filled the benches day after day, wearing green ribbons, Chelsey's favorite color, as a quiet symbol of support. The Crown laid out a clear narrative. Chelsey had gone with Loesch to a remote property in Mission to help with his small illegal marijuana grow-up. She was last seen there on July 27, 2017. Weeks later, her body was found buried in a shallow grave near Loesch's tent, partially wrapped in a sheet, naked from the waist down, with a single stab wound through her back. Forensic testing linked Loesch's DNA to the sheet that covered her remains. Now, I couldn't find any evidence to support or to let us know whether or not she was sexually assaulted. So, even though she was naked from the waist down, I can't say for sure that that had happened. Prosecutors argued that the evidence pointed to a violent confrontation and an attempt to cover it up. The defense maintained that there was no proof of intent, no clear picture of what happened in those final moments. After hearing months of testimony, Justice Dev DeLay delivered the verdict on July 25, 2025. The court found Loesch guilty of manslaughter and indignity to human remains, not guilty of second-degree murder. The ruling showed that Loesch was responsible for Chelsey's death and for concealing her body, but the evidence did not prove beyond reasonable doubt that he had planned or intended to kill her. For Chelsey's loved ones, it was a bittersweet outcome. They had justice, but no closure. Manslaughter, a single word that felt painfully small against the reality of what had been done to her. As word of the verdict spread, frustration rippled through the community. Chelsey's best friend, Cassidy York, launched an online petition urging the courts to impose the toughest sentence allowed for a manslaughter conviction. Support poured in immediately, and within days, thousands of people from across British Columbia and far beyond added their names demanding accountability not only for Chelsey, but for many Indigenous women whose lives have been taken by violence. And I want to pause here and say something directly to you, the listener. That petition is still open. So if you feel moved by Chelsey's story and want to help bring justice for her, please add your name. The link to the petition is under the source information in the episode notes. Or you can go to change.org and put Chelsey Gauthier's name in the search bar. Please take 2 minutes out of your day to show Chelsey and her loved ones your support for her. Because there's something here you need to know. In Canada, manslaughter has no minimum sentence, unless a firearm is used, in which it's a minimum of 4 years. That means the sentence could be anything from probation to life imprisonment for Gary Loesch. Let that sink in. Right now, as you listen to this podcast, Gary Loesch is out on bail, living his life. There has been unconfirmed reports that he is currently living in Campbell River. His sentencing hearing is scheduled for December 2nd or 3rd this year in Abbotsford, BC. Chelsey's family is still waiting, still fighting, and still hoping the court recognizes the weight of what was taken. So please take a moment to go sign that petition. Chelsey's daughters, Autumn and Abby, are growing up now. They're being raised by close family friends of their grandfather Ray, people who love Chelsey and keep her memory alive. They know who their mom is, and they hear stories about her laugh, her spirit, and how much she loved them. And Ray has turned his grief into purpose. On his YouTube channel, Life on the Road with Yeshua, Ray, and Susan, he talks about her openly. His heartbreak, his faith, his mission to prevent this from happening to anyone else's daughter. He's spoken about wanting to start a foundation in her honor, focused on awareness, exploitation, and the dangers young women face when they're struggling for resources. His message is simple but powerful. Stay involved in your kids' lives. Ask the hard questions. Know who they're with, even if it's uncomfortable, because it may save their life. Since the verdict, the community has banded together. People who never knew Chelsey now speak her name, hold vigils, and share her story online. Her photo, bright-eyed and smiling, has become a symbol of the growing conversation about violence against Indigenous women and the deep, lasting impact it leaves behind. For Ray, faith is what carries him forward. He says the words, "I love you," the last words he ever heard from his daughter, still echo in his mind every single day. It's what keeps him speaking, sharing, moving. He believes one day he will see her again. And for those who knew Chelsey, and for those learning about her now, her story is more than a tragedy. It's a reminder of love, motherhood, and resilience. It's a plea for justice and a warning that change only happens when we care enough to act. Chelsey Lee Gauthier was a daughter, a sister, a mother, a friend, and a bright creative soul who deserved more time than she was given. She may be gone, but her light, her laughter, and her story continue to move through this valley, through every person who says her name, signs that petition, and refuses to let her memory fade. Thank you for listening to Valley of Secrets. Your support truly means the world. If these stories resonate with you, please consider sharing the podcast on social media or with someone who cares about our communities as much as you do. And remember, new episodes drop every Monday. If you feel inclined, leaving a 5-star rating on your streaming platform helps more people to find these stories. You can also choose to donate a small amount each month to help keep this podcast going. The link is in the show notes. I'll see you all next week. Until then, stay safe, stay aware, and stay curious.